Doctor said, and I'll never forget it, she said, so I have good news and even better news. And I hit the floor on my knees, praising God. It was an ordinary day in March in 2023. And he had been playing outside on the trampoline, and, boys, they get bruises and stuff. So he came in, I saw a few bruises, and he went and took a shower. And when he got out, I noticed his back had streaks of blood inside coming up out of the surface. So I knew we had an emergency situation and something was wrong. We took him to our local urgent care. They didn't know, and they sent us to another place, another clinic. They weren't sure. We ended up talking to Dr. Larson, and she said we need to get some lab testing done because she knew it was internal bleeding. The water was hitting his back and making all the blood come up because he had no platelets. They did many tests, and at first he was misdiagnosed with ITP, and so they did treatments for about a week for ITP, and they gave him blood and platelet transfusions, multiple, and with ITP, that should last for weeks or months, and they were only lasting 2 to 3 days. So we'd have to go back and get more transfusions. They said we needed to give him a bone marrow biopsy, but it came out to be a very rare disease called severe aplastic anemia. Only a couple in every million have it. And his was severe enough that they said you need to be admitted to the hospital and get a bone marrow transplant for survival. So we had to find a match, or as close to 100% as possible. They took Truett's blood to see if he'd be a match, and Marshall's blood to see if he'd be a match, because a sibling match is the best type of match you can get. It's a 15% chance that one of them would be a match. The odds weren't good. That was probably the hardest time for me, because waiting on an answer is hard. I mean, I was just thinking about Sarah and Abraham having to wait patiently, and it was a hard time. I would, go in my closet and cry out to God and try to be as supportive for the boys as possible and positive. I don't know, how'd you feel during those 2 weeks?
I was feeling uncomfortable, definitely worried. Yeah.
My husband got a job up in Chapel Hill, so the Lord moved us up to Chapel Hill. I was pregnant with this one when we moved, but we had to leave all of our family, all of our friends who were so supportive and wonderful people, and we knew no one. So I kept questioning, why are we moving? And now looking back, I can see God's hand in just that move, because we were able to be located to one of the top pediatric transplant hospitals in the world, where other people are flying in from other countries to receive the treatment he did. And we were only 25, 30 minutes away, so I was able to keep our family life somewhat stable and not uproot everyone and move, somewhere else. I had been homeschooling the boys on my own, doing my own thing. Previously, I was a classroom teacher, so I was just teaching them traditionally how I was always taught. But we were missing community of other homeschoolers. Well, then a friend of mine from one of the classical conversations communities, and Carrie, came over and told me about classical education and about CC. And I was like, what is this? I'm very interested in this, because I started looking through the foundations, and I thought this will be a lot easier, but more comprehensive way of homeschooling than doing 3 different subjects for 3 different kids, and more enjoyable. And once again, the Lord knows, He's written it all, because just the move, being close to Duke, then putting us in this particular community, the director had also undergone a health crisis with her child. So she came over immediately, and I remember sitting out on my back porch, and she prayed with me, and she talked to me, and she gave me some ideas of how I could continue homeschooling. One thing I'll never forget she said, don't be afraid, we're not going to forget you. Don't be afraid, you're not out of the community now. We're going to embrace you. We're going to walk you through this. We're here for you. I'm here for you. Tell me what you need and how I can help you. And she listened. My whole community stepped up. Our community stepped up. Their friends all wrote them letters in the hospital, sent them gifts. They They got a bunch of activities for them to do in the hospital, because he was also in the hospital for a while. They brought us gift cards for gas and food, delivered meals in the hospital to gift to other families who were going through a crisis. It was wonderful.
Yeah. It was a lot, but I knew that we would get through it, and I knew that there would be like some way for him to get a match. So it was definitely difficult, but we ended up getting through it.
True, it's a match, 100% by the grace of God. I remember being at home that day. We had another family from school over. No, it wasn't the Garners, it was the Taylors.
Oh, yeah.
She had 4 boys, and the Taylors were over, another family from CC. They brought us dinner and just came over to just love on us that day, because she knew I was waiting for a phone call that could rock our world. 7 little boys here. They were all running around, and the doorbell rang, and a roofer showed up, and then I got a phone call from the doctor, and I was like, everybody stop, and I went out to the back deck to listen, and the doctor said, and I'll never forget it, she said, so, I have good news and even better news. One of your sons is a match, and not only is he a match, he's 100% match. And I hit the floor on my knees, praising God, crying. And I was in shock. And I was like, of course, he gives abundantly. And I was like, oh no, the roofer. So I ran back out. And let me tell you, God used that as an opportunity to witness, because he said, are you okay? Because he saw I was shaking, crying. And I told him, I said, let me tell you about our Lord. And he's the same God of Moses, the same God of Abraham, because we had a 15% chance. And the doctor told me on the phone that she had never seen, there was 10 categories and every single subcategory was identical. And so I was telling the roofer, and he got teary-eyed, and he said, you know, I'm going through a hard time. I'm a new Christian. Can you pray with me? My daughter, I'm worried about my daughter right now. And so we sat there and we prayed, and he said, I've never felt God's presence before, and I feel it right now. Isn't that amazing? The day he gave his harvest, he was downstairs, and it's about a 2-hour surgery, 2 incisions, 30 times each, and they pull out the marrow. So it's quite a process. And your marrow comes back quickly on its own. That's how God designs us. We talked about that beforehand with him, you know, because we didn't want him to be afraid of losing what he needed. So we talked about how God designs us and how intricately he makes us and how he provides for us to be replenished with our marrow. So he did the harvest, and then they wheeled Truett up to Walker's room for a transplant. Now, Walker had already undergone chemo week, because you have to drain out all your old marrow. So it's instead of going to chemo once a month, it's back-to-back chemo. So you're sick as a dog, throwing up blood, all your hair's gone. You felt really bad then, didn't you? That was a really hard wait. Really hard. Really. They wheel him up, and he gives him his marrow. They literally were holding hands when they did the transplant. By the grace of God, the transplant went really well. It takes a while for it to go through. A lot of times when you get a transplant, you get these other complications. One of them in particular, mucositis, you usually get some form of it. He did not. And so that was something we were able to avoid, thank God. He never got graft versus host disease. It was a hard road. He had a lot of days of sickness after also, because it's not immediate cure. It takes time because all your cells are new. So if you get sick with anything, you don't have anything to fight it. So if he got sick, it was a temperature 104.7. I mean, it's intense. It's intense. The boys were able to go back the following fall to their community, and I wasn't there. And then when we were able to join back, it wasn't, it was a few months later, but because he had been listening to a lot of memory work, he didn't seem as far behind. And I feel like the curriculum itself was easy to travel with, because we did a lot of this hospital, this. So we were able to listen to our songs in the car. It was motivating, and I felt like our community encouraged us. And yeah, I'm definitely glad that we did CC through the hospital, right?
Reference?